Raise your voices, Lenny and Jenny talk. In the mystery, they ignite sparks. Against the tides, they carry the theme. Percussion and rhythm, the world they redeem.
Feel the energy rise, let it flow. Inspiring minds, watch the knowledge grow.
Where the tide is fair, they set the tone. In this podcast world, they take the throne.
Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be unraveling a pretty fascinating mystery for you today. Our source material is a single PDF file. We've been calling it blackbook-unredacted.pdf. And it looks like a contact list. But it's not your average, names and numbers kind of thing.
Yeah, the sheer volume and detail in this thing is really intriguing right from the start. We're talking names, multiple phone numbers, home, work, cell, even fax, email addresses, physical addresses. Sometimes there's even little notes sprinkled in. It's like a blueprint for someone's entire social world.
Right. And the thing is, we're going totally blind here. Zero context. We have no idea who made this list.
Yeah.
No idea why. So our mission for you today is to try to decode this document together. We're going to sift through these entries and see if we can figure out not just WHO these people are, but what their connections might tell us about power, influence. Maybe we can even get a glimpse into some kind of hidden world.
Exactly. Because, we think of contact lists as being pretty mundane. But when you stop and think about the company someone keeps, it can really reveal a lot about them, their place in society, their access to resources, maybe even their potential to influence things.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. The first thing that jumped out at me was the file format itself, .pdf. That suggests that it was made digitally, probably on a computer. This isn't some old handwritten address book tucked away in a drawer somewhere.
Yeah, that's a great point. That choice of format already hints that there was some thought put into this. Someone wanted this organized and maybe even permanent. It's more than just a casual collection of contacts,
And speaking of organization, this list is international in scope.
Yeah.
There are entries from England, France, Spain, the USA. It's global.
Exactly. That tells us something about whoever or whatever is behind this document. This isn't just someone who travels every now and then. This is someone who's connected to people all over the world.
Okay, so now let's get to the really interesting part. The names. And let's start with someone I bet you recognize. Ralph Fiennes. We've got multiple numbers for him here, including his assistant, a scheduler. There's even a separate entry for his speaker scheduler.
Wow, that is fascinating. It goes way beyond just knowing Ralph Fiennes. It's like we're seeing the level of access you need for someone in that much demand, someone whose time is so carefully managed by a whole team.
Exactly. It suggests a certain level of social capital, being able to not just reach these individuals, but to get through their inner circle.
Right. And if we look at some of the other entries, we start to see a pattern emerging. Like take Jimmy Buffett, for instance. His entry has an address on South Ocean Drive in Palm Beach, Florida. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a pretty exclusive neighborhood.
Yeah, it definitely paints a picture of a certain lifestyle. It makes you wonder if this is something we'll see a lot. Are all these people connected to similar circles of wealth and influence?
That's a great question, and it's one worth exploring. And the deeper we go into the details, the more interesting things get. Look at the entry for Mike Lee, for instance. It has a number for everything: home, work, cell, car. There's even one labeled Mike Lee B.
It's a lot of numbers, almost excessive. It makes you wonder what the point of all this meticulous documentation is. Is this just for staying in touch, or could there be a professional reason behind it all as well?
Right. That's where the mystery lies, because we just don't know the full context. We're stuck analyzing these little bits of info, these digital breadcrumbs, trying to reconstruct the full picture.
And some of these breadcrumbs are pretty interesting, like this one from Mark Zeff. It includes his email address, mzeff@zeffdesign.com.
Interesting. That could be a clue about whoever made this list. Were they putting together a list of people in certain fields? Was there a specific industry or sector they were interested in?
It's like we're trying to put a puzzle together without knowing what the final picture is supposed to be. But each piece, each entry, gives us another glimpse into this hidden world.
It's kind of like we've stumbled onto some kind of pre-Facebook social network for the elite. A snapshot of how these people were connected before all the digital platforms we have today.
Yeah, really. And the deeper we go, the more interesting it gets. For instance, there's an entry here for Princess Ferial. Royalty isn't usually my contact list.
That's a pretty significant detail. It points to a level of exclusivity, a connection to a world most people only read about.
And speaking of exclusivity, We've got entries for people like John Paulson, the hedge fund billionaire,
Yeah.
and Nick Pritzker from the Hyatt dynasty. These aren't just successful people. These are major players on a global scale.
Yeah, and for those not familiar with hedge funds, they're basically investment funds that use really advanced strategies to get huge returns, often for really wealthy individuals and institutions. So someone like John Paulson, they probably wield a lot of financial influence.
Wow, yeah. Thanks for explaining that. So we're seeing this mix of wealth, influence, and social standing. But it's not just business people. There's a political side to this, too. Like, look at this entry for Peter Mandelson. He's a pretty well-known British politician. He was an advisor to former Prime Minister Tony Blair.
And his entry is really interesting. It has a bunch of different numbers, including one labeled Peter's Direct, and even a House of Commons number. It makes you think they were pretty close, like a direct line to someone at the very top levels of government.
So we're looking at a list that potentially connects these titans of industry, celebrities, royalty, and high-ranking political figures. It's like a map of power and influence that crosses all these different parts of society.
It really makes you wonder what kind of events or gatherings would bring these people together. What shared interests or goals could unite such a diverse group?
That's a great question. Maybe some of the more specific details hold the answer. Like, there's an entry for Colin Cowie, the celebrity party planner. He's famous for his extravagant events. His entry has a number labeled Colin Portable, always on the go maybe, coordinating all those high-profile gatherings.
Right. It fits with what we've been seeing, this fast-paced, jet-setting lifestyle where
Yeah.
connections and access are everything. It's not just about going to parties, it's about being part of this exclusive social world.
And speaking of that exclusive world, remember that entry for Denny Boatcapt?
Mm.
It seems like there's a whole nautical side to this network.
Uh-huh.
We've got several entries mentioning yachts, marinas, even Denny's cell.
Yeah, it's amazing how all these little details come together to build this bigger picture. It's like this isn't just a list of names, it's a glimpse into this specific world, a world with its own rituals, customs, and ways of traveling.
You know, it's making me rethink that idea we had about this list having a dual purpose. Remember the entry for John Peters Entertainment? It lists a Burbank address, phone numbers for John Peters, Peter Entertainment, and get this, Denny's cell.
Now that's interesting. Could our boat captain be more than just a captain? Maybe he's involved in the entertainment industry somehow, facilitating travel or leisure for these people, perhaps.
It's almost too perfect, like a plot twist in a movie. We might be uncovering a link between entertainment, powerful people, and maybe even some kind of sophisticated travel and logistics operation.
Right, and we have to remember, we're just speculating based on the information we have. But it's pretty amazing how seemingly unrelated details can suddenly fit together.
It's like we're playing detective, using these little clues to map out this whole secret world. And it just keeps getting more interesting.
It does, and it really highlights how important context is. We don't know for sure what the person who made this list intended, so we're left to fill in the gaps ourselves, to imagine the motives and the relationships that might be hidden beneath the surface.
But that's what makes this deep dive so engaging, right? It's a challenge to our curiosity, an invitation to solve this puzzle and maybe uncover a secretive story about power, influence, and the interconnected lives of the elite. It's crazy how much information is packed into this one document. But you know what's really caught my attention? It's not the really famous names. It's the smaller entries, the ones that seem less important at first glance.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sometimes the most revealing details are hiding in plain sight, tucked away among all the obvious stuff.
Exactly. Like, there's an entry for Mark DeHotu, and it just lists his name, a phone number, and the letter W. Probably means work. But what kind of work does Mark do? Why is E included in this exclusive group? It's like a tiny mystery inside a much bigger one.
It really shows you the power of what's not there, right? What isn't said, what they don't explain can be just as interesting as the information they give you.
And speaking of things that aren't explained, there are whole sections of this list that are just baffling. Like, there's a section called Massage Florida. Pages and pages of names, numbers, locations, all about massage services in Florida.
Yeah. It does make you wonder about the purpose of this list. We've talked about the possibility that it has two purposes, personal and professional. But could there be even more to it?
Well, now that you mention it, there's another section that just says island. It seems to be focused on one specific island, maybe somewhere in the Caribbean. It's got entries for Air Center Helicopter, Christopher Taxi. There's even one for the Jeffery Epstein Financial Trust Company.
Oh, wow. Jeffrey Epstein, the financier who was convicted on those sex trafficking charges,
Yeah.
including him on this list definitely adds another layer to everything.
Yeah, it does. It takes our deep dive into some pretty dark territory.
Yeah.
This list started out intriguing, but now it feels kind of ominous.
It's a reminder that power and influence can be used for good or bad, and that even the most carefully built networks can have a dark side.
It feels like we've stumbled onto something much bigger than we expected. We thought we were just looking at a contact list.
Yeah.
And now we're finding connections to wealth, power, maybe even criminal activity.
Right. It shows you how unpredictable information can be. And it brings us back to that fundamental question we started with. Who created this list and why? What were they trying to do? What story were they trying to capture?
Unfortunately, we still don't have those answers. But maybe that's part of what makes this deep dive so interesting. The unknown, the unanswered questions, those are the things that keep us curious, keep us searching.
I agree. It's a reminder that there's always more to learn, more to discover, and that sometimes the most rewarding discoveries are the ones we make on our own, through careful observation, critical thinking, and a healthy dose of curiosity.
So for our listeners, we'll leave you with this thought. Blackbook-unredacted.pdf is more than just a list of names and numbers. It's a window into a hidden world, a world of power, privilege, and maybe even darker things. It's a challenge to you to question, to investigate, and to come to your own conclusions.
Because in the end, what matters most isn't just the information itself, it's the questions it raises, the curiosity it sparks, and the journey of discovery that it inspires. We encourage you to do your own digging, explore some of these names for yourself, see what you can find, and let us know what you discover. The search for knowledge is a collaborative effort. We're all in this deep dive together. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep digging and blowing a